Okie. I dag existe a good day. It is, I don't know, sometime in the morning, maybe closing in on 11 o'clock in the AM on Sunday, the 2nd of June, 2024. In the last part of the lunar cycle, Apistishkit Satos, the flower moon, which is our first summer lunar cycle, is almost coming to a close. And just out for a little walk with Taylor. It's kind of breezy. I want to make a memoirs video, but I don't know. It might be a little bit too breezy. Maybe I'll just give it a shot. If it doesn't turn out, I'll redo it. Something like that. Back into the Boyhood memoirs. I kind of regret. Well, I really enjoyed making that last video. I didn't think I was going to. I was thinking about the Boyhood stories as kind of an ordeal. But once I started getting into talking about it, I realized, holy smokes, there's a lot to talk about. And it's going to have to be a little series. So that last one was part one. I'm imagining at least a 4 or 5 part series now, because as I went back and reviewed that video the night that I posted it, watched it on my TV on the screen and stuff, I realized all these other things start coming to my mind about those times, and I started taking notes, different things that I wanted to include in this part of my memoirs. And I'm thinking as we go through, it's just going to jog a lot of that stuff for me, bring it forward and have me thinking about it. So it's a good process, actually. It's a good process. But anyway, let's get back into it. One of the things that I regret was that as I was describing, we moved onto this street into the new house, and we got neighbors, and I'm making friends with the neighbors' kids, right? And I just described the next door neighbor as this super Christian family, which is important to know. But I think I should just call them the Marshalls so that I can refer to them more easily, hey? Because that's what they're named, the Marshalls. And then across the street, the family that I, had the one boy and the younger daughter, and I just didn't like their energy or whatever. They're the Lindstroms. And then I did mention with that third family, the Burgesses, where the mom ditched the father with the 3 sons and the daughter. So that's kind of the setup I've already talked about a little bit, and we'll come back to those characters from that setup. But also next door to the Marshalls, Marshalls were right next door to us, and then they're the ones whose house I drew with the mud on. and their oldest daughter, I made her a girlfriend. The next door neighbor to that, there was the kids. There was 2 kids there, but they were a little bit older. And one of them, the girl, she was maybe 2-3 years older than me, and deaf. And then her brother was a teenager, like maybe 16, 17, maybe, I don't know, something like this. He was an older kid, and he was really a good drum player, which was funny. He had the deaf sister, and he was a drum player. And then a couple doors down from them, and I don't even remember what their names are. I'd say what their names are, but they're only going to come to play like right here and be gone, hey? So a couple doors down from them, there was another family with older kids, and their son was good friends with the drummer boy, and their son was like a star gymnast at the high school. the high school that I would later go to, called McNary High School in Salem, now Kaiser. that high school, when I was a little kid, had some kind of fantastic gymnastics program. And the guy down the street, at the end of the street, was an all-star gymnast, and his thing was the rings. And I remember even my dad taking me to see one of the gymnastics competitions and see what kind of crazy stuff that guy could do on the rings. But the time that I got to McNary, by the time I got there, you want to go this way? All right. Taylor's leading the way. By the time I got to McNary, they didn't have a gymnastics program at all anymore. And it sucked, because I think I would have been really good at that. I did get my all-time high school record in my last year of school there for pull-ups. I did 32 pull-ups straight. And so that was the all-time record. So even this guy that I'm talking about at the end of the street, this star gymnast who was doing crazy stuff on the rings and stuff, even him, he didn't do that many pull-ups, or it would have been in that record. I got the all-time record. So I think I would have been very good at something like the rings in gymnastics, given that I could lift my body like that, and I could do, mountain climbers and all kinds of stuff on a pull-up bar. It just came natural to me. I can still do some. In fact, I posted a video not long ago on Facebook or something, where I just tested myself to see how many L-hold ring pull-ups I could do. And I did 5, which is pretty pitiful, but I did 5 in good form. And at my age, I think it's, even though I still consider it pitiful, I know it's just because I haven't been working out, So, any case, these two guys, these two characters, this drummer guy, his name was Brian. I remember his name now. So Brian, the drummer, and his friend, the gymnast, the drummer and the gymnast, they were cool kids, eh? They were 1970s, late 1970s, fucking cool-ass teenage kids, right? Everybody younger than them kind of looked up to them and stuff. And I told you about how I wanted to be Popeye. I had a whole year of really getting into this Popeye the Sailor thing, and it dovetailed too with Magnum PI, but we'll talk about that, because he was a sailor as well, originally a Navy guy, and I got very into Magnum PI. But I think somewhere in there, the Muppet Show was a deal. Come on, Tay, let's go this way. Let's go this way. The Muppet Show was a deal, and they had that animal in the band who's played the drums, and was kind of crazy and stuff. And I was entertained by Animal. I didn't want to be Animal, but the idea of playing drums was kind of cool, and knowing that Brian just lived a few doors down. At some point, I expressed it enough. My dad, he bought me a drum kit. I think he bought maybe Brian's used one. Brian had gotten a new one, and he bought Brian's used drum kit for like $50 or something. And then he was going to pay Brian to teach me the drums. And so I remember this first night I was supposed to start learning the drums. Brian and his gymnast friend came to the house. And the way I grew up, I had no, no real modesty or anything. So I think when they came over, when they came over, I was just in some tighty whities. That was it, hey? Or some underoos or something. Just the briefs. And I thought it was just perfectly normal to hang out like that, hey, in just my underwear. But those older cool boys came into my, house and into my room where the drum kit was, and they were, laughing at me. I could tell, and it made me feel embarrassed, hey, to be just in my underwear, which I never felt before. They made me feel embarrassed. And then I don't remember what all happened in terms of my drum lesson that night, but I know my dad did not bring them back again for lesson number. I never got a lesson number 2. I just had a drum kit for a while, which I pretty much didn't use. And then I think my dad resold it, something like that. So I don't know. It was just one of those stories and experiences that came to mind for me as I was talking about the last memoirs and stuff. But let's talk about Magnum PI, because somewhere in there, it must have been when I was in grade 3 or 4 in there, probably grade 3, something like that. Magnum PI came on TV, and I really like Magnum PI, this character, the freeloader, private investigator who used to be in the military, and all this stuff. Like, by that time in my life, I was hearing, stories from my dad about his time in the Coast Guard, and he was stationed mostly in the Philippines, and he had lots of fun stories and stuff. Like, the military seemed like something I would really enjoy. I wanted to have stories like my dad had, and my grandpa's. Both my mom's dad and my dad's dad went to World War II. My mom's dad was in the Navy, and he was stationed in the Pacific and stuff. And my dad's dad was in the Army, worked in a tank, and he was stationed also in the Pacific in Okinawa. And there was like stories and stuff, like even my dad's middle name. My dad's name is Ralph Andrew Hancock, but that Andrew, which he, even today he prefers to be called Andy instead of Ralph. But and most people, in his life have known him as Andy. And but that name Andy or Andrew came from World War II, from my grandpa in the tank. There was one day, I think he was, up on top of the tank, and his buddy Andrew nailed a sniper in a tree that would have probably shot my grandpa. Hey, would have probably shot my grandpa, but he just seen him first and got him. And my grandpa always figured that guy saved his life, and so that's why he gave my dad that guy's name as his middle name, which is a cool, war story derivation name in a way. But Magnum came on TV, and Magnum again, like in that character, I seen, here's a guy who has all this military stories and military friends and connections and stuff, and now he's living, and he's this cool private investigator. He's working all these cases. He's got all these, different woman dies because of him every other episode. Different girlfriend. Taylor, what's up? I just got really into Magnum, and he became important to me. My mom had to sew me some Hawaiian shirts, Taylor, what's up, Taylor? I always, was excited to get my parents to take me to the coast, which is only, an hour and a half away drive. We go to the coast and I could explore different, like marinas and stuff and boats. And I got into this whole idea that I might be a sailor, from both the Popeye and the Magnum character, because Magnum had been in the Navy, And my dad didn't mind that idea. I think he started feeding me this notion of, oh, she just ran off to be with the other dogs. I gotta go back this way. My dad didn't mind that idea. He started feeding me this, well, if you're gonna go in that direction, something cool to be would be to be in the Seabees, which is basically the construction crew for the Navy, the engineers, the guys that go in and build the infrastructure, build the whatever roads and whatever they need to build to support troops' occupations in different places and stuff. He was trying to push me toward, if you're going to go toward military, at least choose something that's going to give you some practical trade skills, which is not a bad idea. But any case, I was way into Magnum. Taylor, come on. Tay. Taylor, come on. She's waiting. She doesn't want to throw that ball for you. Come. Good girl. No, come on. Stay with me. So Magnum was on Thursday nights, because Thursday nights always, at least from that time on, I remember Thursday nights always having the best TV. But Magnum was a Thursday night show. And this is where Thursday became my favorite day of the week. Its derivation is in Magnum PI, to tell you the truth. And my Magnum commitment did conflict at times with other things. Like, I remember at one point I tried out the Boy Scouts. I had a friend, my Mormon friend, who I made by about third grade or so, Chet Lundy. He lived a few blocks away from me. Chet Lundy and Terry Bowie would become my best friends for most of my boyhood, and they lived only half a block away from each other, but they lived about 3 blocks away from me. And it wasn't until third grade or so that I started connecting with them. But Chet was in the Boy Scouts because he was Mormon, and they had their own troop at the church, and his family was super Mormon. I think I talked about him in the Rye in the church video. This is my friend that I always debated growing up, about the existence of God and stuff. And he was in the Boy Scouts, and he got to do cool things, like they went camping instead. And one of the things that made impression on me is they would go camping at old military bases, and I was interested in the military by that time already, at whatever, 8-9 years old. And so I thought maybe I should look into the Boy Scouts. So I joined a troop, and there was a couple of things I didn't like about the Boy Scouts that I eventually quit. I stayed in long enough to get a few merit badges. I know I got a first aid merit badge. What else did I get? I got a swimming merit badge. What else? I know there were some other merit badges that I got. But, and I got to go on a couple of like camping trip kind of things, hey? So I stayed in a little bit. I don't think it was more than maybe 3 or 4 months, to tell you the truth. Taylor's visiting with somebody. Hold on. She's making a friend. Come on, Tay. sometimes she gets so into making a friend that she doesn't hear me. Come on! She's hearing me. So anyway, yeah, I was in this Boy Scout troop, and I did a few things with them. 3 or 4 months worth of Boy Scouting stuff. The two things I didn't like about the Boy Scouts is there was all of this religion thing kind of goes on in the background. Right? You gotta like swear to, you gotta do some like oath to God and kind of stuff all the time. I think it's in the Credo or something. I don't know. The Bible is always referenced by the Boy Scouts, and it's, to me, I find that weird because I didn't come from that background. So to me, all of that subtext of Christian stuff underlying Boy Scout stuff, I didn't like that. And then my troop, originally I think they were meeting on Wednesdays and all was good, but then maybe 3rd month in they switched the meeting days to Thursday evening, which conflicted with Magnum PI, and that was going to be a problem for me. So I quit the Boy Scouts, and I quit it primarily so I could, watch Magnum PI. We didn't have VCR yet at that time and stuff, shit, I don't even know if my family had a color TV yet, because I remember in those years when I was playing with the Burgess kids down the street, the kids with the mom who ditched them, when I was playing with those boys, one of the real benefits that I always remember to go, like I'd go stay at their house overnight on a weekend or something, have a sleepover, and they had a color TV. Not only did they have a color TV, but they had like HBO and stuff. They had cable TV, which I didn't have. I don't know if I had, I don't think I had color at the time, because I was very impressed with the color TV, and I didn't have cable. So like I'd go over there and we'd watch like Friday the 13th or something, and scary movies and stuff that I didn't have any access to prior to them. So Magnum PI, I had to be home and I had to watch it at the hour that it was going to play, or I wasn't going to get to watch it, So Boy Scouts had to go, because Magnum was way more important. Come on, Taylor. She's met another friend. I think that guy's, I don't know what he's doing over there, but he doesn't have a dog with him, so I'm assuming he doesn't want a dog. Look at this Caspian terns kind of fishing over the river here. It's the biggest tern. Come on, Tay. Let's go. Taylor. Here she comes. Yeah, I talked about Stacy Epping and my girlfriend that I met in 1st grade, and who lived about a block away from me. On that same street lived another kid my age named Stevie Lanning, and I talked about him in the Rye and the Snakes video. Stevie was my friend whose parents were drunks, and and he got a reticulated python and a corn snake and all of that. So yeah, I met Stevie in school, and him and I got along pretty good, hey? And he just lived close enough. And actually, I got along better with him than I did any of the kids on my street. He was way more like me. Little dogs.
There's a rattlesnake about midway down on the path.
Oh, on the path?
Yep.
Okay.
33 minutes, 7 seconds total. Distance 2.5
We're gonna stay by the river, Miss Tay.
Average pace, 16.
Yeah, it's
33.
it's that time of year out here where I shouldn't even be bringing her 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning like this. It's too warm, and her chances of encountering snakes down here is pretty high. So I'm endangering her if I take her after dawn for these walks. I think I'm going to talk about Stevie. Where are we at? We're 25 minutes in. So I'm just going to cut off the video for now here, and I'll catch back up a little later in the day. Taylor, stay down here. So I want to be on the alert for her encountering a rattlesnake right now until we get back to the vehicle. But yeah, I'll get back into these stories a little bit later today. Check it out. I think TC's ran. I think TC must be here. That's a Magnum PI reference, by the way. Yeah, I don't know what age that Magnum PI stuff really started and things, but I think it was around that time, what would it be, 1980, 81, something in there. Yeah, I don't really want to go into those Stevie stories yet. We're going to take a little walk out here. I've never been to this is a new park out here, and I was told I should come take a walk out here and check it out. It's on the extreme south side of Lethbridge by the airport here. But yeah, I don't really want to tell Stevie stories yet because I started reflecting on it, and I think there's more to say about some of the way that I was being really mind washed already at an early age by the culture. Mind washed to be interested in the military and martial arts too, you know, even though I don't think the martial arts was a bad one. The military, I should have known from the Boy Scouts that I wouldn't really enjoy the military. Because the Boy Scouts are kind of militaristic, you know, the way that they organize themselves, and their, you know, their troops, and their, you know, they're uniformed, and they do kind of military parade drills and stuff like that, you know, and their structure, you know, the rankings and this kind of thing. It's all very militaristic. And I didn't like it, and I should have known I wouldn't like the military. Eventually, I got in the military and found it to be something that I didn't expect. But I think that was largely because of what media was telling me to expect, and from my family. Like, you know, my grandpa's stories and my dad's stories especially. You know, he didn't go to war. He went to the Philippines and hung out in the jungles and shit, and you know, was skinny dipping and scuba diving. And he has a story about snorkeling down one time and disturbing a moray eel and having it like follow him all the way up to the surface where he thought he was going to get attacked. And he had a whole big photo album of, you know, his Coast Guard experience, like Polaroids and stuff from that era, and lots of, you know, jungle scenes and stuff. He had a big reticulated python skin. He had from the Philippines. He had one of their swords, and it was super fucking sharp. I think my brother owns that sword now, but the blade, you know, has that curve to it. But you don't fuck with that blade; it cuts you. It's a high quality blade. But you know, he had all these crazy stories about stuff with his military buddies and things, and you know, stuff that they did with monkeys, all kind of stuff. And so you know, I was being inundated by family. I was being inundated by media a lot, because the post-Vietnam War vets were trying to, like, they were starting to create stories in the media, for us to see, and different, war then was different for them than the World War II veterans. So, you had that World War II kind of structure that everybody knew to military and war and stuff. And then you start getting more like a guerrilla element, like from the Vietnam War, hey? And this is where I think the like martial arts and the ninjaism and stuff like that start filtering in through the major media. What are some of the good examples? Well, of course I want to, like, I already talked about, like, Popeye is, military, and Magnum PI was military, and Star Wars war was military and martial arts. And then there was G.I. Joe. Like when I first got introduced to G.I. Joe, it was like the big G.I. Joe doll, hey? Like I know when I was living in California, still very young, I had a couple of G.I. Joe dolls, hey? And a Bionic Man and stuff like that, hey? The bigger dolls. And those were before action figures were even invented for boys. Action figures were like the way to make boy dolls cool. But eventually, like, they came out with an action figure line after Star Wars, because everybody got introduced to the action figure thing with the Star Wars characters, the 3.5-inch characters or whatever. And then out came a series of G.I. Joe guys. And for the most part, I wasn't interested in them because they looked like the World War II G.I. Joe still. Looked like they just shrink the 12-inch doll into a action figure. And so you had the communication specialist who had a radio, and you had the heavy machine gunner who had a machine gun. You had a bazooka guy, and you had just a grunt. And they were all like dressed in regular like fatigue green, like World War II type stuff, eh? Fatigue green was in Vietnam too, hey? But then they had one character in that first series who was different. He was this oddball guy. He's all dressed in black and even had a black like hood over his face. And he was a good guy. But his name was Snake Eyes, and he's dressed all in black. And, there's something different about him. And I was already into snakes, of course, and so even the mention of snake. And then on top of this, they had the bad guys were Cobra. So they had a couple of different, Cobra guys in that first series too. And I wasn't all too interested in the G.I. Joe, but that Snake Eyes character and the Cobras kind of interested me just because of the snaky affiliation, I think. And I had other kids on my block who were buying those G.I. Joes. And so, if we wanted to play Joes, I had to get into it. So I ended up buying some G.I. Joes. And then they came out with the second series of guys. And that's when things got really cool. That's when things got really interesting because instead of just the old World War II's, hey, instead of just the old World War II looking characters, they had diversity now. I think they introduced a black guy, a heavy machine gunner who was a black guy. They had Spirit, the Native American character, who had like a crossbow and an eagle. But I loved Spirit. And they had, among the bad guys, there was a white ninja, Storm Shadow. And that was it, man. Between Snake Eyes and Spirit and Storm Shadow, at that point I was sold on G.I. Joe. And again, it's like pushing the military, go be a hero, real American hero, hey? And the martial arts connection. And, got to work in a little bit of that Native American stuff, because you have to understand all of this time that I'm talking about too in the background, I'm being told things about how, oh, you're Blackfoot. And it's some of that is being used to kind of explain cool aspects of different family members, things that they're into, like my Uncle Lee. Like he really seemed to like, my mom's brother Lee really seemed to be kind of connected with the landscape, such that he was always finding arrowheads and shark's teeth and all kinds of weird like little nature facts and stuff like this and artifacts. And that was kind of like, oh, because of the Blackfoot, hey. And then there was like, oh, but they drink too heavily and they're really, they're really alcoholic, and that was because of being Blackfoot, So the best stuff, the coolest stuff, some of the coolest stuff and some of the worst stuff was being blamed on the native thing. But anyway, I had that. It's still already going in my mind that I'm part Blackfoot or whatever. And so the spirit character, I was glad to buy up that character, hey, and play with that. And in fact, they started up, G.I. Joe started a comic series and a television cartoon series, both of which I was way into. In fact, I still got all of those comic books. I've been thinking about selling them as a set, hey. But in the comic books, you get this background of, Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, and they're both like Storm Shadow grew up in a ninja lineage, and then Snake Eyes is got in there through the military, like ended up in that ninja family as kind of an adoptee, and was kind of the like stepbrother to Storm Shadow, and they had a kind of a sibling rivalry going on, a ninja sibling rivalry going on, beyond that they're on different armies, basically. Storm Shadow's a Cobra and Snake Eyes is a Joe, And anyway, I got really into G.I. Joe, more so, I think, than Star Wars, eventually. Star Wars, we only got up to Return of the Jedi, and then it stopped, and G.I. Joe was still going there. But that whole, inundation military, martial arts, and then somewhere in there, in that same period, might have been my 3rd or 4th grade year, 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, An Officer and a Gentleman came out in the movie theater. A rated R film. Now, I had seen my first restricted film. I don't know if Jaws was restricted. Was it? When it first came out, I remember, and I talked about that in another video of my mom taking me to see Jaws in the theater in California. My first scary movie of a sort. I think my second was The Beast Within. My parents took us to a theater to see The Beast Within, which was a really not a child-friendly movie at all. This was a horror story, but on top of the horror story, just like some serious gross stuff, like there's rapes that occur and necrophilia and other stuff in this movie. Freaked my brother out so bad that he was bawling, and one of my parents had to bring him out of the theater, and couldn't go back in to see the rest of the show. I stayed in. I think I probably stayed in with my dad to see the rest of the finale of the show. But The Beast Within, check it out, or just look at the trailer and you'll see like the era. This was the way 70s era. I saw The Beast Within. That was an R film. And then the next R film that I was taken to see was with my dad. We went to go see Officer and a Gentleman. And again, military and martial arts and making it look cool. This was, what's his name? I want to say Zach Mayo, but that's the character's name in the film. That's not his Richard Gere, you know. And it was the first time I saw guys wearing wife beater t-shirts, and I was like, from that point on, that's the kind of t-shirt that I have to have as an undershirt. For real, as an officer and a gentleman, that influenced my wardrobe for the rest of my life. My dad took me to see that film, and we stayed in the theater through 2 showings because it was so good. We just stayed there through 2 showings right away, and then he took me to see it a 3rd time, again, maybe a week later, something like that, 2 weeks later. And in that film, you see Zach Mayo, who grows up as a kid of a kind of a drunken sailor, Navy guy, and he's living in the Philippines Islands with his drunken dad, and there, he gets his ass kicked on the street by some kids that know martial arts, and of course at some point after he acquires martial arts skills himself, so that while he's in his officer training program and he's beefing with his drill sergeant who is really trying to develop his character in a good way, they fight, and you get to see both of them use their South Pacific martial arts skills against each other in a kind of a kickboxing match. And he just, he had that same thing like Magnum, where he's a guy that doesn't follow the rules. He's kind of still a child at heart. He hasn't really grown up. You see him kind of failing in a relationship that at the end of the movie, he goes and gets his girl from the factory, picks her back up. But there's a breakup in the movie with him and that girl over him just not being a responsible, mature guy. All of this is like being fed to me as symbols of and representations of what it's good to be. I mean, I had no, in a way, I had no hope but to have some of the trajectories that I did in my life. But the military thing is especially messed up. Here, now in this era and in Canada and stuff, I don't see any of that. But if I go into Montana and just hang out at a powwow, it's all of a sudden so veteran oriented and stuff again. It's like it's a real celebration of war that the U.S. maintains, and that stuff fills your brain as a kid. And I got to start thinking, that's who I want to be, right? For sure, I want to be in the military, like my dads and my grandpas and all these cool characters like Richard Gere and freaking, Storm Shadow and, ninjas and all this stuff, like, started building in me. This is a path to being a hero. And all boys want to be heroes, eh? All boys want to be heroes. And so in the U.S., the military offers you a path that they say you can become heroic in. But we'll get to the riot in the military video. But all of this is good background that I think is important for that point when we get to the age 12, when I really start looking at the military seriously and I start practicing martial arts and all of this stuff, kind of in my interest in indigenous and Blackfoot specific knowledge starts pulling in, and all of this stuff. This is the background of it. I was heavily media influenced. I've been shaped by the media as much as anything, more than some things, I think, because I found mentors, but they were, I found excellent mentors, older people and stuff that I thought that did have knowledge that they imparted to me. I don't have any mentors today. It's one of my problems, actually, because I've I was traumatized by the loss of a few of my mentors in my last remaining mentors, really, in 2015, 2016. I lost the last of the people that I really was looking up to and wanting to learn from. But as a kid, I had some. There was an older guy, lived a few doors down, a grandpa. He used to smoke a pipe. His name was Jim. And I would go visit with Jim for, hours. He would teach me things. Eventually I had a high school science teacher who we'll get to, Gary Miller, who became a very good friend and huge influence on me. And then from there on, I always had a kind of mentor. But for most of my life, my mentor was my dad, and I was being influenced by media stuff. This is all nice out here, but I don't know what I should use it for one of my public walks, but I'm not sure what kind of theme I'd put on it. Anyway, my mentors, the media, the social organizations, that I was, because even school is kind of structured military-ish, classrooms are basically like a company or a troop, and you have your squads, your rows of desks and all of this. It's still very much like the culture is so military, the American culture. I didn't appreciate it, of course. Growing up, you don't know any different. That's just the whole world, It does go on very nicely for a while here. But I think I've seen what I need to see. Start hiking back toward the truck. The whole culture is structured to inundate the mind, normalize the military stuff. Okay, and that was definitely happening to me. Military, like the realism of killing people and all of that, and of what the mission of the United States military is, was completely obscured by all of that media. Even stuff like, I know I seen The Deer Hunter. Whenever that came out at an early age or whatever, I seen The Deer Hunter. And of course, when you're a kid, that makes an impression on you, because you see, what's his name, blow a hole in his head with the pistol, and the blood is shooting out, and like you see him kill himself with a pistol. And you see, the guys at war being kept in cages and tortured and shit in the river and stuff in Vietnam. I've seen movies like that too. Somehow even and then, in the later into the 80s, there's a whole series of new movies that comes out all about that Vietnam era stuff, all about Vietnam War. And eventually, in my opinions, culminating in movies like Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, which were much better portrayals of military experience and stuff. But still, in some way, it all glorified it for me. It all glorified it, so that more and more and more and more and more, I was just being rooted by the culture toward a stint of military service. Okay, and rooted toward other things too. Seemed like you needed the martial arts to be a really high-end military, special forces type of guy, hey? So the martial arts started playing in. In fact, going back to, I forgot to add this in, you know, when I was talking this morning about the gymnast kid who lived at the end of the street and Brian, the drummer. Another thing that those two got into was there was a Kung Fu school that opened in Salem, kind of by the Kaiser Fred Meyers, in a building that later I would help open up another martial arts school in. But at that time it was this Kung Fu school, and like Kung Fu, you know, like I don't know what the actual style was, but you know, I was training with a bow staff and stuff. My dad brought me there, signed me up for lessons, and it was again a thing that I did for a few months or something. I don't remember much from there. The instructor was like a really 70s looking type of character, like the kind of long rock star hair, you know, and it just reminded me of like Peter Frampton or the Bee Gees or something, the way he looked, you know. And then the only thing that I really remember technique wise from there was that when I dropped my bow staff, there's a way to pick it up by rolling my foot over top of it and rolling it up onto my foot and then kicking it up to my hand. And I still, you know, if I play with sticks, I still use that technique. Whenever I drop a stick, I don't lean down and pick it up. I use my foot, bring it up to me real quick. But yeah, I don't remember a lot. But it was my first, you know, officially, it was my first martial arts training, hey? And I'd say that probably happened when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, you know, somewhere in that age. My first training, and I'm looking forward to the Ryan the martial arts video, because it just goes on from there. After that, it just in some ways never stopped, but it really doesn't start like full till 12 years old. Anyway, I think that's good for today. What are we at? 25. We're probably close to an hour between the two segments, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks for tuning in and listening to my stories. There's still a bunch of that Boyhood shit to cover, but you can see how this is leading, where because I want to get into the martial arts and military topical memoirs, and you can see how I'm being shaped toward that, you know, the influences in my life. Anyway, it's another memoir. Come back in a few days or whatever with the third installment.